All right, it looks like we are live with way fewer technical errors this time. I'm very excited about that. So thank you again for joining for a follow-up. I'm very excited to dive into today's conversation.
Yes, great to be here. And I'm sorry, like you said, it was a little technical issue here, but it looks like we managed.
Yeah, this time it looks like it's going much smoother.
Yeah.
So last time we talked a lot about like saddle pads. We did talk about shims. I remember talking about that, and custom saddles and fitting to the rider. And I'm really excited to continue deep diving into Western saddles in particular, but all saddles as well. So let me, before you go too far, let me double check and make sure it's all on everybody else's end. It is live streaming. I'm going to double check that. It should be good. Just give me 1 second. Okay, it's working. I got confirmation. All right, great. So if you want to take it away.
Right. Okay, so this is, I like to start with this picture here. This is from Dr. James Borson. So he's a medical doctor, and he wrote this book, The Rider's Pain-Free Back. And the typical cliche, or the guy rides the Western and the girls ride the English. We know very well there's guys who ride English and women who ride Western. So I think what he tries to bring across here, that the rider has different spines, right? So that if you're a male, you have maybe not as much lower curvature, but for sure, your tailbone is not as short as the lady. So guys, males have long tailbones, where ladies, due to the birth channel, has lower tailbones. So a specific question you said was about the pelvis axis. Is that right?
Yeah, when we wrapped up our last one, that was kind of there was 3 different things you said at the end. You mentioned the axis for male versus female. I'm not exactly sure where that was running with it, but I'm excited to learn about it.
So. And was that a webinar as well, or was that a live stream?
It was a live stream. It was, yeah, that's what we did last time, was like this with the you had the visuals and stuff as well. So we were just going to expand on that and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so in case I do something double here, so please excuse, but let's see how it flows. All right. So when we look at riding, you know, I choose this picture because, again, we think typical, the cowboy, not the cowgirl, the boy, who herds the cows. And then I got the picture on the bottom right, the sports rider, typical, the female in English. But as I said, we have cowgirls or women who ride Western just as much as boys ride English. The reason why I have that picture up on top here, I love that picture because many people who are with horses have seen these pictures, and you see, you know, this guy standing guard, he's watching, and both horse and rider sleeping. Now, most likely, eventually, the rider will fall off, as we cannot sleep standing, or we cannot sleep sitting. Maybe we can sleep sitting in the chair, but balancing ourselves on a horse, pretty hard. Pretty unique how horses are able to sleep while they're standing. But what I love here is both male or rider and the horse are hunched over, so their center balance are aligned. So when I ride dressage or I ride sport, I want to get the hind leg as much under I can to the sternum of the horse. That makes the horse lighter in front, and he or she, the mare or the gelding or stallion, is able to lift itself up. If you see horses who do sliding stops, or they need to accelerate, in this case, they need to sleep, they bring the hindquarter all the way under. So when the hindquarter to the sternum aligns with the rider's sternum, everything is in balance. So I kind of like that picture. And I also like that picture because it shows us, here comes the word balance again. When we ride, there is a certain sweet spot. And I either sit too far back or too far forward in the jumper, right? This guy here also knows where the sweet spot is. But look how he's sitting, right? His legs are forward, sits way back. And you see that's typical with a very forward neck carriage, right? So why would he do it? Well, just like here, okay? Automatic, we want to be over the spinning spot, over when the horse spins very fast or when it jumps off. We want to bring our center of gravity, which is the bottom of the sternum, to the horse center of gravity, which is the bottom of the sternum. So if you are a child, and I have grandchildren now, and I just see how they learn how to walk, okay, they always walk on tippy toes first. As a matter of fact, if you look how your foot is built, you have not a big fat pad, a bunch of tissue underneath your heel. You have a lot of tissue underneath the ball of the foot. So the horse's heel in the hind leg is the hocks, and the hoof is the middle finger. So we as human also, when we run, we don't run on the middle finger, but when we sprint, we run on the ball of the foot. When I go and align my sternum over the ball of the foot, I'm in alignment. So when we take, let's say, a cast on two people, one is a female, the other one is the male, and we align them the way you would stand or the way you would ride, balance, which means ball of the foot in line with the sternum. We learned shoulders, hips, and heels, one line, as a riding instructor tells us so many times, but we talk about pelvis axis in the moment. Okay? How is the pelvis positioned when you sit on the toilet, or when you sit at the dinner table, or when you sit on a saddle? As the riding seat is not considered a sitting seat. Sitting seat is where you sit in the car. You sit on the office. But riding, you have more what they consider a standing seat. The only difference is in a standing seat, your weight is not on your feet anymore, and you don't balance your toes on your ball of your foot. You balance now everything from the midsection of your pelvis. Okay, you balance yourself on the pelvis. So when you look at these two pictures, here's the guy, male, here's the female. Okay, it's a bad angle, but you would see the tailbone goes way longer. Here you see it shorter. Okay, there's also this O here, it's much bigger, and the seat bones are much wider. But I would like you to look at this. This here, where the fingernails are, or the fingers of this person on the picture on the left, that's your seat bone. And then this bone goes a little longer, that's the pubic branches. That's a branch. And then it goes a little up, that you have very, very little space between your pubic symphysis, so that's the pubic symphysis, and your crotch. The guy, seat bone, check this out. This pubic branch goes straight up. On the lady, it runs on the saddle. And right there where my mouse is, that's where your underwear line goes through. I, as a guy or any male, have never rubbed where the underwear line is. We think you girls make this up. We think you guys invent that just to bug us. Or I remember so many of my students, oh, the saddle rubs me off my underwear. I said, get off the saddle, let me feel it, or if you make it up. So I go on the saddle, where's my underwear line here? I never feel it. So unless you have a birth channel and have a pelvis, what is born to give birth, and you have, therefore, your pubic branches left, you might run into a problem where you're on your underwear if the saddle is not properly in the seat. You also might run into a problem that you hit your crotch, because a guy always can put his genitals to the left or to the right. Ladies don't have that option. I'll come back to that later. So having the pubic symphysis so low, what we saw after we took a cast of these two people, same height, same body shape, tall and skinny, but typical for guys, heavier because they have more muscles in general, and the bone structure is different. So they both have the pelvis position now, what we call in the standing seat, the way my natural seat is as a rider. I don't care if you are a cutter, if you are a team roper or a pleasure rider or a hunter jumper. This is the natural seat. From there, I need to sit back or lean forward. So if I compare now the impressions, seat bones are narrow and you see no impression in the crotch on the guy, but you will see one from a girl. Why? Because the way I just showed you the previous picture, this one here, how the branches go forward, and this is much lower. The reason why I wanted to see everybody this is because here we have a very good indicator from a saddle maker point of view, how my ground seat on the Western saddle, or if you write English, how the tree and seat foam needs to be shaped. If a girl would ride in his saddle, your seat foam would probably go over the edge. If a girl rides in this seat foam, you would fall always backwards. Now, why would that be? Why would you fall backwards? Because you don't have a long tailbone. So if I'm going to look at the pelvis from the side, we can clearly see the difference from the tailbone, which was a little bit visible in the previous picture. So let me just jump ahead on my slideshow here. Give me a second.
This gives me so much insight into a lot of the struggles I had for a long time with many of the initial Western saddles, or mostly Western saddles when I started riding in them. And it was such a struggle to stay forward. I just wanted to fall back constantly. I'm like, I know this is the correct seat size, all this stuff. And this gives a lot of insight to that. This is wonderful.
Yeah. And actually, I was mentioned in the book, this is the book from Dr. James Warson, right? I just took the picture of. I actually saw from the veterinarian, right? Dr. Nicholson from Florida said, why do the riders sit so far back? Now, and we all know in the Western, as well as in English, the majority of the ladies, let's face it, okay? We can drive cattle with a helicopter or 4x4, right? Yes, they are still the traditional cowboy, but there's different ways. It's not a need anymore just to do it with horses. But we have so many English riders who now go to Western. Okay, so what this vet says is very important that the ball of the foot is with the balance point of the sternum of the horse with your sternum of the horse. Right, so now my pelvis is neutral. And look at the butt cheek here, very close to the horse's back. That's a male. And you say, well, women have normally bigger butts than guys. Yes, but I really want to go into the factor of the structure of the different pelvis. This is a picture of a video called The Pliable Seat from a Spanish riding school. So many clinicians tell you, bring your toes in, sit more forward. Why can you not do it? And I feel like a broken record because I used to say this all the time to my female students, right? And we always want to have the horse fit the saddle. The saddle has to fit the horse first. And I love this video because they say it very, very clear. Okay. This is the perpendicular line, right? So shoulder, hips, and heels, not happening here. Okay, so she has to cramp her thigh and get it back or get the seat more forward. And they clearly say, you will hurt the horse if you don't have the perpendicular. I mean, it goes a little bit more detail in the sentence, but what I'm trying to get across in this webinar here, and that's why I'm so psyched and that you doing that, is we always want to do the horse the best job, but I have to reduce my weight in half. You see many Western riders, heavy guys, and they ride the horse and says, look how soft the horse goes. And then you see a girl half the size and it goes much heavier. Okay, so remind me later. Sorry about that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Technology, it's always messing us up.
I tell you, you leave me alone. So anyway, so when I look at from the side view, okay, so the guys have higher clearance in the crotch, longer tailbone. You hit first here, the back of the seat bone is not supported, and there's a lot of space in the tailbone because it's shorter. So of course you follow down. Unless you constantly grip with your thighs, you know, you will fall down. And then you got that stupid chair seat again. Okay, that is a Western or English, doesn't matter. So if I'm looking at the structure of the pelvis without the saddle, the way a doctor would explain it, where your leg comes out, calls the hip socket. And the hip socket, for us guys, to put our leg behind us or right straight, also known as a crotch seat or fork seat, we can easily sit in that seat. For ladies, it's impossible, okay, because you guys have a different hip socket. Here you can see clearly how much more, sorry, this one, longer tailbone is. And in general, the guys don't have such a curvature in the lower back. Okay, so if I make this go slouch and then I lean forward, this is the pelvis. I'm just bending that vertebrae forceful forward. That blue thing is your disc. You wouldn't believe how many riders, Olympic riders, advanced riders have been operated on a slip disc, collapsed disc. You can't even walk anymore. But there's many, many riders who say, I got to sit more forward. I got to sit more forward. So what we know now makes the rider fall backwards is the shorter tailbone and the way your hip socket is. The other way, saddle's made like a rooftop in the crotch. So we force on the Western saddle, the male's part to the left or the right. What woman wants to sit or ride on the rooftop? Absolutely none. Okay, so even if you, a person who had operation and you now different gender, because that's what you prefer, your sex will always be the same. You know, you are born with a pelvis and hip sockets and the rotation of your thigh, no matter what you do to your parts. So this is what I'm referring to. Okay? So guys, the center of the femur goes down to the knee in a straight line and straight to the foot. The neck, the part of the bone, this here, this is the neck of the femur, is longer on the ladies and on the guys. Where you sit on the seat bones are here. So what has that to do with saddle fitting? Well, if you have a leg like that, what has hips, your femur goes actually into the knee and then straight down. But what I found fascinating when I talked to gynecologists is it says, why do so many people have this, especially women, so much pain in the back? Why do so many women complain about hip problems when they ride in a Western saddle or English, that their hip hurts and they fall back into this hole? Why is that? Well, then he said to me, son, you need to understand that the muscular tissue between the difference between a male and female is guys always have oval thighs. What do you mean oval thighs? Well, their muscular tissue, it's more inside. So if I look at the thigh, okay, if I would take a cross section of a woman's thigh, it's always round. I don't care how skinny you are, how strong you are through your thighs, it's round. On the male, if I take a cross section, it's oval. So in other words, in your crotch, pardon me to be so rude, but in your crotch area, we got more space for the junk. Okay, there's more space here. Women, your stuff is inside, and the way your neck of the femur is, and the shape of your thigh, there's less space. And the reason why I jiggle my mouse back and forth there's also a nerve called sciatic nerve. Okay. When my student complained to me, my leg falls asleep in that saddle. Oh, I got sciatic hip pain. God, how come I ended up with the biggest whiners? Because as a guy, we don't get it. We don't understand women in the first place. Well, we're trying to, but then when somebody tells you something and it hurts, then we look at it and says, okay, if it hurts here, the lady will push herself back. So not only that it hits you in the crotch, or the saddle is dished out for the long tailbone for the guy. Now you're sitting in a Western male saddle, what's too wide in the hip? You push yourself back. You got all that stupid pressure over the back of the horse. So if I look at this, if a different side, okay, these are anatomical facts. This is not something I invent because I want to sell you guys Schleese Western saddle. Of course I do. But this is something every doctor, every research you ever look in will show you. Guys are straighter to ride bareback, straighter to the horse with the lower back. No, your butt cheek is very close. This is the standing seat. If you ride as a lady, female, bareback, because you have a more arc in your lower back and your shorter tailbone, there's space here which we don't have. So when you ride bareback on the horse, you instantly crush your crotch, your bone first, then your crotch, and then you land finally to support you. Okay? This is not because you are bad riders. It has nothing to do with that. Right? As a matter of fact, most riders are female. They have more. I know guys will hate me what I'm going to say, no, but in general, riding is not muscling a horse. It's to be in tune with that animal, to be one, not just in the soul, but also in the movement. So if I have more sensitivity as a female, I'm kind of jealous of them because they have that more than guys. Full stop. We just have the advantage that we have the bone structure, what fits closer to the bone structure of the horse. This is not made by nature. We just lucked out. And as a saddle maker, I always made saddles for males. Male-made saddles for males since thousands of years. It's only the females in the last 40 years who demanded a saddle to make them. I talked about the hip socket earlier. The rotation of your hip socket goes a little bit more forward than for the male. So if I ignore this as a saddle maker, I can say, come on, suck it up, buttercup, try a little harder. And if I have a big reputation or a big belt buckle because I'm a local rodeo champion or whatever, I have enough students who follow me and do whatever I say. But if I teach lesson and I want to teach harmony, I want to have people who actually get somewhere, then I need to understand the fundamental, most important aid to a horse is your seat. It's not your whip, not your spur, not your voice. If you say, whoa, or oh, giddy up, horsey. No, it's your seat, how you communicate through your seat. So if I make a Western saddle ground scene and I don't know the pelvis of the axis, I'm like years behind saddle making. This is the pelvis of the axis. So if I'm looking from the bottom and go through the center of the hip socket, it's smack in the middle. Every beginner guide, every single beginner guide goes on the horse bareback on the saddle, instantly how to balance. Because just like a tripod, I have a balance. My weight is in the center. A woman, your hip socket is more forward. Hence the reason why your hip socket and your leg is more forward. So if I'm looking at that and says, that's not fair as a woman, then I can say to you something very simple. Let's say I want to be a woman, I want to bear a child, I have all kinds of sex and organ change. I still can't bear a child because my child will never go through here. Okay? Nature made women so they have childbirth possibilities. Okay? Your seat bones are much wider. And if I'm looking at the pelvis axis like this, I need to consider maybe when I make a saddle, I take in consideration there are 9 different features which are completely opposite from male to female on a Western saddle, Army saddle, English saddle, doesn't matter. 9 different features. And if I don't, you fight your tack. So, and what are these 9? The stirrup bar. On the male, we have a shorter upper leg, longer lower leg, and we have larger feet in general. That means my fender or my stirrup leather hangs more forward. Ladies, opposite for you. Your upper leg is longer, your lower leg is shorter, you have smaller feet in general than the male. That means if this fender comes from the front, your leg is always dragged forward when you like to rise the trot, when you do a 2-point. Well, I'm a barrel racer, or not barrel racer is bad. I'm a roper. I want my leg forward. Yeah, but not if you're a barrel racer. You never get out of the gate because you're falling back. You know, if you watch barrel racers, they're standing in their stirrups and off they go. A good Western saddle has this free swinging fender. If I got to get my leg forward for my sliding stop, or I got to get out because the horse takes off, barrel racing or whatever, I decide where I put my fender. Not my fender decides and jerks my leg forward, like we had that picture earlier here. There's the stirrup leather. What's with that? Right? So very, very important on an English saddle or Western saddle. A Western saddle right here. I built this in the ground seat. Where would the fender come out? Right? The fender comes out here. It hangs around these bars. Okay? Do I have it hang out far forward? Or I measure the rider and then I can figure out where the fender hangs. Easy, easy peasy, very easy. Okay. Number 2, the width of the ground seat or the seat width. Okay. This is the ground seat here. This is one. It's a saddle tree. Started. It's a rawhide tree. Okay. And then how I shape this. Okay. How wide do I make this? Do I make it nice and narrow for the male seat bone? Of course, because I assume that all riders in the world are guys. If I assume the majority of the riders are female, I make that wide. Okay, of course, we have women with wide hips. Remember what I said? The hips are the neck of the femur. It's not your seat bones. We see sometimes women with narrow hips, narrow waist. And I did not know that, but a gynecologist told me, if you don't want to take a woman into a cast, another one, what I showed you on my slideshow, just look what shoe size they have. What has that to do with anything? So apparently, that's what the gynecologists look. That's how they can tell how wide the birth channel your seat bones are. Where I'm going with this is, even if you're narrow-waisted, narrow hip, you could have still a birth channel, which is to 90% true. So the seat width is the opposite for male and female rider. Number 3 is the space, how wide here. Okay, on the guy, I make a wide ground seat. I want a nice wide ground seat because I got a lot of space between my thigh and I don't want to wiggle there. No woman likes to sit on the saddle and feel like you sit on a tabletop. Right? I want that narrow there because there's my muscle, my bones. So that's what we call the ground seat in the front, the distance from here to here. Okay, that we make narrow. Then number 4, that's more of an English seat because there we have a seam. Okay, the seam on an English saddle. Okay, we have that very narrow because that points to a very pointy seat foam. That means the male parts go one side down or the other. Right, so narrow the seaming on the women on the seat. So pointier the saddle in the crotch. Now on Western saddle, you will see all seats are very wide. Right, so that's pretty okay, I guess. Number 5, how much foam is in the back? On the guy, long tailbone, we call it a cup. It's cupped out. And you sit in there and you feel like nicely hugged. On a woman, remember that one picture I had? Here's the picture on the guy. All this part here, this long tailbone, his butt cheeks need to go in there. But if your butt cheeks are higher because of your stronger curve in the lower leg, you might want to have this filled out. To fill out this area does not make you fly back, because otherwise your disc in the lower back will pay the price. I mean, you're very young, but there's a lot of riders who in their high 30s, 40s, who constantly complain about their back pain or their hips.
I already suffer. I'm 30s, and so I'm listening to all this and I'm like, yep, yep. And I've had 3 children, so that's also like there's just stuff, and I'm like, yes, this is 100% on board. Yep.
You felt that, right?
Yeah.
So number 6 is where I'm cutting out in the center the ground seat. Okay. For the girls, it's definitely more important in the front, because your pubic symphysis is low and your female parts are in the front. On the guys is in the center, we cut a hole in it. And people say, why would you ever cut a hole in the center? Right? Not in the front, in the center. And that's from when I sold my patent. I have a patent on our trees to the bicycle company. And all the bicycles in the world changed. They all have a cut in the seat, a hole, because there's a little blood vessel that goes to the male's part. And if that gets constantly squeezed or ruptured, no Viagra makes the man happy again. So obviously, if I'm a professional and I ride all day long, why would I risk to get injured down there? So that's why all bicycles and all our saddles have either a cut in the middle for the guys, 6, this area, or for the women, point in the front, because you're probably remember that cast picture I showed you earlier. Your bone structure hits there first, and you don't want to get rubbed or hurt or irritated in the front. I couldn't believe it when the gynecologist said to me, we have a lot of riders who have chronic bladder and kidney infection from a saddle. He says, what do you mean? Well, if you constantly get rubbed, shaved, and hurt in the front, you'll bleed. So there is not a single male rider who would ever ride again or keep riding if they have blood coming out of certain areas. For women, that happens once a month normally. So for me to build saddles to create additional pain makes no sense. So once we took the cast, that makes so much sense. No matter what eventer, jumper, dressage rider, Western rider, endurance rider I am, I want these holes there. Doesn't matter if I'm a male or female rider. I want them to not create long-term damage. Number 7 is the height of the cantle. That is most of the time to fill the gap. And on Western saddle, you know that yourself, neck rotation, Western saddle is different than a barrel racing saddle. Depends on what divisions you ride. In general, the guy want very low cantle on the Western. The ladies prefer a little bit more height. Again, not to fall back. And number 8 has something to do with what we call the pelvis axis. Okay, the deepest point on the guy is more in the center towards the back. All right, so definitely more in the center. You saw the pelvis axis of the pictures I showed on the women was in the front. And number 9 was actually what I said first, was number 1. That was the stirrup bar we talked about. So I guess I skipped no, I did skip this.
No, yeah, I think we got everything else. That's okay. It all still aligned, so it's good.
So that help you a little bit to explain?
Yes, this has all been really fantastic. One of the things, and maybe you have it already prepared or it's next, do you have any like quick tips or suggestions for people in being able to evaluate whether their saddle is being helpful and supportive or if it's hindering them, like just some quick assessments they can do themselves or have somebody else do with them or for them?
Okay. Do you ever seen or saw these saddle stands? They are sort of metal, you open them up and that's freestanding, and you put the saddle on. Okay,
Yeah.
so put one of those saddles on of those saddle stands. You could do it on the horse, but it's easier if you take the horse away. And then wear those jeans you like to wear when you ride, because the jeans have a seam in the crotch area. You never want to feel that, right? So then the saddle stand will hold you. If you are under 300 pounds, it will hold you. Over 300 pounds, it will collapse. So let's say you weigh less than 300 pounds and you sit on that saddle stand on your saddle. Take your feet out of the fender and sit the way you want to sit comfortable in that particular saddle. Now have a friend take a picture from the side when you say now. Okay? And then have the friend position you, pull your leg back, put your thigh, your toes forward. So the friend sees it from the side, shoulder, hips, and heels, a perpendicular line. You may or may not like it. You may or may not like it, but just hold that for them to take the second picture. Then look at both pictures. In the one you thought you sit correct, I guarantee you will see you sitting like a cowboy with your neck forward, butt back, leg and toes out. If that's how you want to ride and get that nice hunchback and this nice problem in the neck and between the shoulder, forget it. If you see the other picture says, wow, that would be cool if I can maintain that posture in my saddle and I don't have any pain on my hips while I try to hold it for the picture, then you're good. Then that means you have a saddle where you can hold it with a little bit conscientious thinking here, right? I got to have my standing seat. So most of the time, by the time the friend lets your leg loose and goes far away to take the picture, you already say, hurry up, take the picture. My thigh is on fire. So if you feel that, you know that's not good. Second test, okay, you can do that without the friend. Put your feet in the fender. Don't hold yourself on the horn or anything else. Go and stand up. If you have to stand up on your fender this way and then up, okay? If you lean first forward to stand up, that's not good. If you can stand up this way, you go straight up, then your feet is under your balance point and your fender hangs in the right position. Last not least, the last or a good help I can give you guys is if you sit in the saddle, on the saddle stand, pretend your belly button, okay? Your belly button, you can suck it all the way to the spine. You really suck your gut in and you kind of make a round your lower back, you make it as straight as you can by sucking in your belly button without leaning forward, okay? You want to see how much does my pelvis can do this. So when I want to ride a sliding stop, okay, I want to sit light. Now I want to ride the sliding stop. If you're already sitting in this position, falling back, there's no movement. Then I want you to put your tummy out as if you are 7 months pregnant. In other words, your shoulder, hips, and heels is one line, and you push your tummy out, and this is what the pelvis will do. Okay, so if you push your tummy out, the pelvis rolls forward. If you say it doesn't roll anyway, then A, you're sitting in the hole, right? It's hard to get out. You're not in the neutral spot, right? You need to get out of the saddle. You need to sit light. Okay, watch cutters. You know how they sit in the saddle? Yeah, they hold themselves on the horn and lean forward. Okay, but if you want to follow people who done this for 1,000 years, you want to follow horse experts, people who teach this since 400 years, your seat makes you a good rider. No seat, no rider. It's an old saying, no hoof, no horse. And the same old saying is no seat, no rider. If you're not able, by doing that, sitting in the saddle without your fenders in, and standing in the fenders, put your heels down and try it again. If you can't do that in the saddle, then one of the 9 points, which is here on the screen, is working against it. I remember like yesterday. Yeah. So I'm finally made it. I made it to the German team as a 3-day event rider. And this new coach, I didn't like him at all. Not what he said to other people, what he was really mean. He yelled at some of our riders and he says, if you don't stop being such a baby, you might want to stay home and go. And I find the next person who will take the spot on the team. Because A, you need to train more to force your leg back, or B, you got to find a way, find a massage therapist, find a physiotherapist for you to get the same leg alignment than Peter has. Mary now says, because that really happened, you know, how can I change with the physiotherapy this hip socket? Okay, this is the hip socket, what has this bony thing. This bony thing helps your femur, this is the neck of the femur, this is the leg, sit in your hip socket. Okay, and you can feel it when you grab your thigh inside and dig almost at your crotch area where the thigh meets the crotch. There's a tendon, a ligament. You can feel that rubbery, stringy thing. And that runs in here. Okay, so my finger. So if I'm teaching you, run your ligament over this bony, very sharp shelf, your leg is on fire. Okay? You will not do it. So if my pen is that ligament, and this is level, it's coming out more at an angle. Now let me get a male's hip socket. Look at this. This is level. Okay. But look at his hip socket. It's way on the bottom. Okay. We don't have that shelf. It's very smooth. We can literally ride with our thighs behind our trunk without feeling groin, pain, or stress. Now, I didn't make up the rule. Okay. I'm just a saddle maker, and I'm just love surrounding myself with experts who know better than I am. But if I hear people who say you have lots of sensitivity in the fingertips, but times 1,000 in your crotch, your subconscious mind will protect you from not getting deformed or hurt in your body. Okay, so even if you say, I can ride on any saddle, of course you can, but what is riding? Is this riding where you had that deformity here and leg and toes like this? Your body will compensate to protect you from this. But then if clinicians show on top and says, how come so many people hang on our reins? If you don't have a horn, let's say you have a Western saddle without horn, and you need to get out of the saddle, you either swing your body way forward, okay, or you bounce around the horse. I mean, this is not stuff what I make up. You hear this a lot. So no matter how good you are, or no matter how much you diet or you work out, you cannot force your bone structure, your bone width, even if you have an operation. You can't change this. It has nothing to do with your want. You cannot change this. These are very, very strict facts. But what you do can change. Okay? What you can change is the equipment you choose. For example, I will never ride in women's underwear. There might be other guys, but there is no way I'm going to ride in that. Okay? I also don't ride in women's riding pants because there's not enough stuff for cloth or material for my crotch. So I'm going to speak very high. So why would I not wear riding apparel, equipment, what is soft and stretchy? Right? A saddle tree, what is made out of rawhide, wood, leather, Some saddle makers use thin. Okay? Do you honestly think with proper riding and the good workout and diet or whatever will work? You cannot deform this. This tool will deform you. So your choice is to buy or have a saddle what fits you without hurting you in the hip, making your leg fall asleep because this sciatic nerve runs inside the thigh. Okay, so there is lots of options for the rider.
This reminds me of it's just an ongoing struggle for everybody to find the saddle that fits the rider, the saddle that fits the horse. And oftentimes we end up compromising somewhere. And a lot of times it comes down to finances, right? We don't want to invest in the custom saddle and we don't want to, and I understand that. I've definitely been in that position before. But if we think about the longevity of the situation, just like, doing spine surgery is not cheap. It's way more expensive than a custom saddle. And also the pain and the suffering that's going to come with that and how it's going to compromise your welfare as a human and your day-to-day life. And it just reminds me of just how important it is. Like if we're going to get on a horse's back, not only are we needing to spend extra time and attention and probably financial commitment to ensuring that our horse is comfortable and move and able to move appropriately for their body, and we're not compromising anything, we're not causing long-term problems through the saddle fit. We need to do the same for ourselves, so that we don't end up in the same boat. As you're talking, I'm reminded of just so many situations growing up in different, riding different saddles where I got blamed so much for different things. Like one warm blood that I rode for a long time. I mean, he had the most beautiful, just big canter, but it was like just the bouncing, right? Like I could not sit that canter. And I'm like, I can sit, I know I'm strong enough for this. It's that my saddle was not helping me. Anyway, so this is really great.
Yeah, so for me, as a saddle maker, it really makes no difference how I make the seat curve. And if I look at Western saddles, if you have the full skirt or you have the half skirts, what else is there? Or you have the lightweight. Okay, I would never go with a custom saddle myself, even though you said you should have one. I would recommend people, especially on the Western saddle, there is 7 different ways how you can make a bar and how you need to change the curvature, the length, the flare, the front, the flare in the back, the width of the bar, the angle of the bar, and the rock of the bar. Okay, so if my horse change, I need another saddle. So I recommend when you go to the shop, and if you say, okay, medical doctors know more than teachers or the guy with the gold buckle or this tack shop or just wants to sell saddles, this is my recommendation. Get a saddle what can be adjusted. There are our Western saddles, you can change the bars. You don't need another saddle if you change another horse or the horse changes. And here's the best part. If you want to keep the cost low and you want to share a saddle with your husband or your wife, you can have an interchangeable ground seat and you can have where to put the fender in the right spot. So now, not only do I have a saddle I only buy once, not only have I a saddle I can refit to my horses over and over again, I can also have now a family saddle or a partner saddle. And if you say, no way my husband gets to ride, he plays squash, I ride or whatever, right? It's nice to know that you can change your ground seat yourself. In your barrel racing, you might want to have a ground seat what holds you more. In your cutting, you want to have a ground seat what gets you a little bit more in one or the other position. So I strongly recommend to check our Western saddles out, just like Schleese.com, and try one. I mean, where is your base? Where do you live?
I live outside of Austin, Texas.
Oh, perfect. So actually very close to you. Her name is Charlie. She went to Texas A&M.
Okay.
And she lives in Austin. And you should try that once. Just
I would love. I have I have some of your saddles, but they're the dressage ones, and so I'm a big fan, and I would love to. I've been watching
Yeah.
you guys roll out your Western saddles, and definitely been eyeing them, especially as I have two young horses starting up right now.
I'm going to give Charlie your info, if I
Perfect.
may, and
Yeah.
then she can do a little demo. You know, then you
Perfect.
can try it out and you can see how that is, how that saddle would feel when you sit in the different ground seats. You know, we can make you ride in the male seat. Says, yeah, that's how my saddle looks like, feels like my Western saddle. And then we change the ground. Sorry.
We'll do before and after pictures. We'll see how. Yeah.
That would be awesome. You know, I mean, even guys, do you think they're comfortable like this? They don't want to have a deformed body like that. But and then also to see the difference. You know, how you do your sliding stops or your spins. I guess they call it. Yeah. So, what else you got for me as a question? You had two questions written down.
Yeah, so I'm going to give this opportunity for anybody that's listening right now to pop any questions in the chat so we can read them. In the meantime, I know we just have a little bit more time left. Let's see. I think I don't know that we want to dive into talking more about Western saddle fit for the horses today, because I feel like that's quite in depth, and we did cover quite a bit in that in our last live stream. So we'll leave that one. I feel like that'd be opening up another hour-long conversation, which of course I would love to have, but I know you don't have time for. Let's see. I think we covered a lot. And then how to go about the process. So what would the process look like if somebody wanted to go about getting, oh, here we go. I'd love more information on your custom saddles for myself. So what would be the process if somebody were to go about doing that with you guys? They would contact you through your website and then they would work with somebody one-on-one, or how would that go?
Yeah. Because sometimes we have customers from far, far away. Then we say, oh, you know what, we can't really help you. But COVID really helped us because we needed to develop a long distance fitting kit. So we sell saddles, a lot of Western saddles to Australia because we're not going there a lot, or to remote islands in Southern and South America, or even in Asia or Singapore, which is part of Asia. So we have a long distance fitting kit. We call that online fitting. So if you go on our website, schleese.com, okay, there you definitely will see how that works. Or you say, hey, I'm living in Texas and I want, just like Anne, that Charlie comes by, or you live in an area Charlie doesn't go. We have many different reps who would come to your barn in North America. If you listen to us from Europe, we have lots of reps in Europe. If you listen to us now from South Africa, we got a lot of reps in South Africa. And now, because of our Western saddle so highly adjustable, we have also now fitters in Melbourne and in Brisbane, where they can come out for you to try the Western saddle before you spend all the money. Because I always say, it's easy to sell a great picture. It's easy to sell artists. Please don't be offended. I didn't mean to say it this way. You can make something look nice. What I'm trying to say, we get convinced sometimes by words and by pictures, right?
Good sales tactics. I mean, that's just kind of how we, yeah.
But in the end of the day, I ride my horse how I feel in the saddle, how I feel my horse. And my horse communicates how he feels me. So if you are far, far away where we don't have fitters, at least we have long distance fitting kit. But if you have a chance of somebody to come out for you to try it, absolutely do it. Because there, you don't have to listen to song and dance and pretty pictures. You get to feel it. And if your horse all of a sudden starts chewing, it's soft, listens to your leg, to your seat, so much more interconnections there, then nobody has to talk to you. Your body, you know, your instinct, you know, that's what I want. I do not want any more equipments. I don't want riding breeches that don't fit me. I don't want underwear doesn't fit me. I don't want Western hats or helmets don't fit me. I want also saddles that fit me, and I don't ride anymore in saddles that's made for a different sex or different person. So if you don't want that, try it first and you'll be blown away. Your horse will thank you forever.
I love how dedicated you are to, does this feel right? And listening to that feedback from people. I think it's very easy in many different industries to be like, this is how it's supposed to be. These are the rules and you must conform to those. And yes, there is guidelines and, general rules, but also at the end of the day, I mean, like you said, you're the one that's riding and it needs to feel right. It needs to feel good. It needs to feel good to the horse. And I love that. That's amazing.
Thank you, Adele.
I had somebody in the comments say, thanks for this. I can relate to so much of it. Finally, my husband and I realized we would never be able to share the same saddle, even with two horses that were virtually identical, which now with y'all's, interchangeable stuff, maybe they could, but
yeah. If they don't ride at the same time, they absolutely could, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So, but if they ride together, then they need two saddles.
Well, there's that.
That's a nice feedback. Because like you said, I'm very passionate about it, and it's kind of I wasn't always like this, Adele, because I was one of the top trainers in Germany when I was riding for the German team, and I had people who I could just yell at it and shame, and I say so or go away or get the next one. So it's embarrassing to admit that I was one of those, but if you really want to have a great rider as a student, or you want to have a great horse, it only works if the interface, the saddle, is not your enemy, right? It fits you. And if you're a coach, if I would know back then what I know now as a coach, oh my God, I would have so many top teams. When I say team, horse and rider, who would go so far, and my poor sister gave up riding because I was very blunt with her and says, you're just a baby. You're just typical woman who doesn't want to listen to a man, right? And of course she gave up riding because that harassment brother of her was so mean. And all women who just listened to that comment said, oh, what a bad boy he is. But we all also know there's a lot of teachers who teach like that, and that's wrong. You've got to listen to your horse and to the field,
and to the rider too. Like you said, there's big transformations happening in the horse industry. It's been slow, but I mean, I've come from the very similar place. I definitely used to train that way as well. And I was just talking to a student the other day, or not a student, I was a colleague, and she was telling me about her earlier experiences. And she was telling the trainer that she didn't feel right about what the trainer was asking her to do to the horse riding wise to make it, conform and fit. And she was fired as a client because she expressed that level of discomfort. And that's not very different from being like, this saddle is not working, or this is painful, or whatever. Like as coaches, as teachers, as mentors, as trainers, we need to be listening to both of our learners, the human and the horse, and also to ourselves.
The reason why I was laughing is not because it says, gee, that sounded like me in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm so embarrassed. And you could not talk to me like that in the past because it was all about my big freaking ego.
Yeah.
And now I feel how bad I did for so many good, talented riders and horses, So I guess that's why I'm so passionate about it. So make it good.
Yeah. Well, I am glad you're passionate about it because we need more. So, all right. Well, with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing such wonderful information. I'm going to be thinking through all of this, and I'm looking forward to connecting with Charlie and anybody else on your team. But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Adele, and all the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.